Hello everybody and welcome to Army Painting Series 7, Episode 4. This will most likely be the final episode. And we're going to get into our, let's grab a brush here to point some things out. Going to get into some of the final details, some of the highlights, some more of the weathering, like what you see on this example here. So we put some of the initial weathering in, some of the darker sepias and umbers. We're going to get some lighter tones in there, something a little bit more orange along those lines. Work some more on the bases. Alright. We've got our musician over here. We'll do the glowing eyes on the horses. We're going to do some highlights on the armor, just like we did on our finished piece. And then eventually in the final segment, we'll get to the basing. We'll use our green stuff for leaf punches. Put some of the leaves down here like we did, some grass tufts. Leaves, the tufts, and get ourselves a finished unit that's ready to go do some battle reports. Like we've been using, we'll go with the oil brushers. I think you're going to see even more of these now in this final stage, but we'll still have the oil paints out there. And of course, we got to use our, I always do this just to remind everybody. So the brand is Speedball. This is the sub-brand, or more specific brand if you want to call it that. And again, odorless paint thinner, they are not all created equal. Even some, they might not even have the intense smell of other ones. You're still going to notice it with the paints themselves. I don't think we're going to be using the sponges quite so much. And we're actually going to be using smaller brushes now. You can see my mostly destroyed Winsor Newton Series 7 right here. Well, like we've been using it with the oils, it's almost like a conditioner, and it brings it back to life. So I know I've been asked questions about the Winton. It turns out even these larger tubes are still Winton, and I've used these since the very beginning. They've dried just fine, they work just fine. As I know that there is I guess there's a difference here. So someone asked if there was a difference between the Artist Oil Color and the Wintons. I haven't noticed any whatsoever. I think it's more just the size of the tube or whatever. Yeah, even the logo is basically the same there. So we're going to get the paint out on the palette here. And we're going to work on completing the rest of our Morghul Knights. So put some fresh paint out on the palette. It's time to get to that secondary weathering, if you want to call it that. And like I said in the intro, that's where we get some of these lighter rust colors involved. You can really see it here, I think, on the shield. And we've got some fresh oil brushers out here. All of this, all different oil brushers. We got the rust-colored one. I think that's your red primer. This is the red primer. We got the ochre, we got a yellow, an orange, a couple of dark greens. We've even got, we've got off-white, essentially like a maiden flesh like we use with the acrylics. As far as the standard paints go, raw umber, Payne's gray, that's your raw sienna. So let's see if we can't create ourselves some little glazes here. What we'll do is get into the orange here. And you can see we're thinning that down. Let's go, I'm going to go into the red primer color here. We're thinning this down. It just looks an awful lot like a regular, say, acrylic wash, but it's going to be different. And let's make sure we take advantage of that capillary action by we drop it and go. Gonna do this around those rivets. Like so. We've got this area here, and we are going to take advantage of that. Remember the old chest match thing that we keep talking about? Well, we knew this was going to happen, this lighter phase of adding the weathering and the rust and such. That's why those first layers were darker, because then this would show up. The nice thing is, see, it's still translucent, so it's not, we're not just adding orange paint to this. We've got a purpose here. There's a specific reason why we're adding this. And because we set it up in advance, see, because we have the dark there, look what just happened. We have, it just, if I didn't have this dark stuff around there, if it was all just, say, the lighter tones, you're not going to see this so much. What I can do, see, I can get the excess paint off the brush. What do? We just soften the edge right there. I had no idea this was possible. It wasn't really till I did the vehicles, and obviously with the vehicles you're going to do more in the way of weathering than a traditional miniature. And it was in the experimenting and trying to figure out how that worked that I just thought, betcha that might work for regular miniatures too. Lo and behold, it did. See, look at the capillary action. I just carried that right down. See that? Carried it right down there. Yeah, it's not like water wouldn't do that. And there's mediums, I guess, you can use to, well, it's kind of hard to thin down water, but you can change its properties a touch to perhaps make it more like oils with that capillary action that we are mentioning ad nauseum. I know we mentioned it a lot the last few episodes, but it's just like that notion of the thinner paint will stick to the thicker paint and vice versa. You'll hear that repeated an awful lot because there's no way to get a message across like repeating it until people want to mash their head into a wall. You have to constantly, I have to remind myself, even though I've been at this 3 years or so with the using the oils on miniatures. Look at how that's already, this is the other thing too, is it's so thin, there's so little oil in there. You're also going to notice that it's not shiny at all. It's wet paint and it's almost as if it's drying the way acrylics would. Now, by no means are those dry. You could go in here and you could push those around. See, you can move them all over the place. But I will mention this. Most of the paint that I'm working on top of right now, it's dry. And it was just it was what, yesterday? I think it was within 36 hours. It's bone dry. And remember when we last saw these things, they were glistening. I mean, they were wet. There was some seriously wet paint on these puppies. Well, horses, maybe not puppies, but you get where I'm going with that. Here, let's get a little. So I want to make it, again, you can go too crazy with it. I'm actually going to throw a little bit of ochre in there. It does a couple of things. It's going to warm it up, but it changes the color a touch. Also makes it slightly more opaque. This is something that I think it matters. It matters more. Well, it matters in 2D art a lot, a whole bunch. But I think it matters more with the oils necessarily than with using the standard acrylic style paints. And what I'm getting at is that opacity, it's not just how much water or thinner or medium or whatever it is you're using in the paint. That's one way to get more transparency or change the opacity of something. That's one way. But the paint itself, and you probably, if you haven't noticed this specifically, maybe on the periphery, you've maybe, oh, hey, that looks a little bit different. It's not quite what I expected. And that's because colors like ochre, was it cobalt blue, cerulean blue. That's one. Yeah, cerulean blue especially. Some of your cadmium colors, the earth tones. There's one that I'm going to start to use eventually. It's brown matter. It's another new color that I got. It's a regular oil paint. Those are just naturally more opaque. Doesn't matter how much you thin them. They're just opaque. And then there's the thin colors. So your phthalo colors, like phthalo green, phthalo red, phthalo blue. Now you can't quite see it, but we'll just grab one example here. So this phthalo green, you see that? Just up around the cap there, see how vibrant and transparent that is? This is a naturally transparent color. So even if you were to put that on something at 100% opacity, right out of the tube, guess what? Not gonna cover completely. You'll see it because it's really, I call it, we used to call them staining colors. Yeah, well, it would stain your clothes for sure, but the other reason you call it a staining color is that it's just so intense and vibrant that any color you mix it with would be really overpowered by it. And if you mixed a little bit of opaque, well, ochre, white, whatever with it, you'd still have phthalo green. But now, see, look at that, I just threw a little bit down into the crevice there. I'm going to throw some over here. Just like this. Some back here. So look at the difference this makes. It's nothing super complicated. It doesn't have to be difficult. For whatever reason, I've been seeing a parade of difficult lately. There are people just, something that could be done in 3 steps is done in 15 or 20 or 30. But just so many things added to it to make it more complicated. Even something like this that is a more complicated topic, the oil painting. In effect, to me, it's simpler now than the acrylics. If you're saying, all right, look, you have your preference of materials, time is not a concern as far as drying and deadlines, that sort of thing, because deadlines are important. Even if you're not doing this as a commission thing, well, you got that tournament coming up, well, like I do. You have painting deadlines even when it's not part of your business. You got a game coming up. You really want to have that new unit done for it. Well, that's deadline. It's not a life or death deadline. If you're asking me, say, Jim, you can do whatever you want. What medium would you choose? Now it would sort of be oils. I'm telling you. Before it was something that I'd say, okay, yeah, in a pinch for my army painting, I'm going to use that. But just in general, if you just say, okay, look, here, what's your preferred thing? Probably would have just said acrylics. And I'm just working this around. Now look I really like this shield. Because that's why we left this top part dark here. Yeah, this way is easier for you to see. By leaving this stuff dark, give us more room to show off some of this lighter rusting stuff here. Check that out. Really nice. Look at this, we're just dusting it right on. Watch what happens here. See? Dusting it over the top. That's dry oil paint underneath there. Now I could do that with the wet oil paint too. You saw me doing that. But this adds one more dimension. So letting the oil paint dry, and this is something I just discussed in a YouTube live episode, that is also not the end of the world. Because that was the next thing was, well, gee, what happens if it dries? What do you do then? Now you've lost all of your advantage. And I said, well, no, not really. Now this one is really going to show it off. See, we got that turquoise in there. So let's change up the timber of this a little bit. We're going to even let it be a little darker. And just not gonna do every single rivet here, but we're gonna do some. See, not the entire rivet there, but you see how I got right around that. I'm gonna do that here. And then I'm gonna play off of those larger, or off of the darker spots. We'll push this around. And look at how soft I can make that edge. And like I said, if this paint was still wet, I could still go ahead and do everything that I'm doing now with no problem. But now I have a little bit of an extra fun advantage in that the paint is dry. Look at that. Look at that capillary action. Just sucks that right in there. Look at this. That is so cool. You know, get some boom right up in there. I've got a unit of Free Folk that I've been working on, and part of them were dry, and then parts of the unit were super wet because I was in the part of the process that we saw in episode 3, where I'd done all of the initial shading washes and such on the figures, which meant they were shiny, they were glossy, there was wet paint all over the place. There was wet paint everywhere. And yet, I was still able to do lots of fun little details on those. Because I want you to think of this in a way that, not to close off doors, to say, oh, well, no, I can't do that because the material won't let me do it. It's amazing what materials will let you do when you explore how they work. When you see, this is, alright, I can only push it this far. Or, ooh, wait a minute, I can push it this far. And it's only things that you find out by trying. I know I said it in the last video, and essentially every other video before that. Trying new things. I certainly wouldn't be using oils. I don't even want to think of just how different this whole experience would be for me without having the oils. It's beyond just what it lets me accomplish. It's just how much fun it is. I've never expected I'd enjoy. Look at that. Never thought I'd enjoy the oils this much, ever. So that's fun. We got one last one here. And then what we'll do is a few other dark glazes in places, and then we may have a couple of stages where we're working on lighter stuff. Obviously we got the highlights to go, but that's really that's a final last minute sort of thing. Actually, what I might do, since this it's drier than I thought it was going to be, I might even put the red eyes on the horses. Yeah, I think we can squeeze that into this segment instead of later on. Yeah, this is our last horse here. I didn't do the banner bearer because I didn't want to have to get into gluing pieces together and stuff. I can make him more of a standalone video. It was a little too many parts to be dealing with. If it's a standalone, it's easier. But when it's a whole army, and I thought, you need to be distracted less by that sort of thing. Again, not every single place is going to get this. I have to think about Just see, pushing that out, making it transparent. Do that here too. See, it looks like it's dry, but I can still move that around just fine. I don't want to do... Oh, this is something I should mention. And this is something I used to do because, oh, it looks so neat. And that would be streaks on especially armor. Shields, well, you could say that the shield was set up somewhere in an upright position and the rain hit it and it got streaks on it. To have a bunch of rust streaks on this would look really neat. I'm not denying that. It would look fabulous, be very descriptive, but you'd be guaranteed to have people saying, wow, what, was he holding himself in that position for a week like the Tin Man, just sitting there getting rained on? Well, he could. If it was a long journey somewhere, they're wearing that armor and they're getting rained on. It is potentially possible, I suppose. But, you know, people are people, and it gets really irritating. I just had that happen the other day. There's certain forums and other places that just have a tendency to be way more nasty than others, and it was something that was posted even without my knowledge. I didn't make the post, and they were... Oh yeah, actually it was... They didn't like the fact that there was a rough ground underneath the horses. So that's not great charging ground. Well, yeah, why would an infantry unit stand somewhere where it was perfect for cavalry to run them over? Just ask Alexander and many other cavalry-oriented generals. They weren't... Sometimes they had to go over unideal ground for whatever reason. Life is not a parking lot. So with that done, I'm going to bring out cadmium red medium here. Wow, look at how intense that is in the in the camera there. So it's just a tiny bit. Doesn't take much at all. That's it. See if we can't do some little eyeball things on our horse, that glowing red eye stuff on our horses here. And where's that now? There it is. Alright. Can you see it? I think so. Let's do the other one. Then we'll get into our smallest of small brushes to lighten that up just a touch. And most of the color that's down in there, that is just our initial glaze wash, whatever. Obviously I like to think of the glaze as more of a controlled, tightly controlled wash, but we've done mostly controlled stuff the entire time here. We haven't just let loose. Even that initial stuff might have seemed uncontrolled, but was it? Because we were going back into it with the sponges. We were manipulating it the whole time. And obviously it was setting up everything that we're doing now. Even the stuff with the eyes here. That was all set up with those initial washes. Glazes, whatever. Here's another little eye there. I guess it just occurred to me because we got the same colors going now. Let's see if we can find a... Oh, this is one of our old, just demolished Winsor Newton brushes here that we're going to see if we can't make a nice bright... Something brighter here to put in the part of the eye. Let's see what happens here. Not sure you'll be able to see it. But I can. I did just see that go in there. Now I might even touch a touch of white in there. That's that off-white. What's that doing? It's just increasing the opacity. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Sometimes you have to kind of prod and poke for just the right thing. Let's get this one in here. There we go. Maybe even a touch of orange glow. Let's see. We'll go there. Now some of these horses, they got their choppers here and some little bit of their tongues. So let's see if we can't do some of that. Don't want to make that a pink tongue. So say I just mix that red and that seafoam green. It makes more of a purple type color. And it's thin. We'll just go right in here with it. That's good enough for now. Let's go back to our lighter eye color here. I think that's where you can see it. Oh yeah. If that was all wet down in there, it could still be covered even though it's wet because of the paint being thinner. Here. Let's get a few touches of lighter stuff. Let's get some red. A little bit around the eye there. Now I'm going to go back to this color. Get the tongue there. I got some ochre and some of the off-white to maybe do a couple of teeth in here. Which I might, well, I'm most likely going to go back over again with a little bit of a darkening glaze. So see how this now, that's very bright. This stuff starts to fade and tone down a bit. And we'll go back to our first couple of guys here and do the same thing. Right there. Get some of it on the periphery. Do some of that here. Another shot right here. It's a tiny little detail, not super noticeable, but even that little bit can make a big difference. Got another open mouth one here, so I'm just going to do like I did before. Not go too crazy on the tongue there. Let's get a few teeth on this. There we are. And I think this is the last one. I'll double check. Let's get that where you can see it. There we go. That's more like it. On the other side, like there, and there. Let's do the same thing on this face right here. It's gonna be hard for you to see. It just looks like a dark mass there. And these are some of the little details that we're gonna start to bring up some more. So it is not just all dark. I might even get a little bit of that red onto the snoot there and his nose. So we've got our glowing eyes there. Just gonna do a double check to make sure we've got it on all of them. That one's got it. And this one doesn't have it. That can be tough when you're doing large units. It's almost inevitable that you go, oh, no, forgot about that. Or at least that part of that. So how the heck did I forget that? Well, you get distracted, something happens. Somebody's knocks at the door, it's a phone call, have to answer messages, kids doing stuff. Any number of things that can be distracting. That just took a little bit of the green, mixed it with the ochre. And we're doing the same thing, just picking out a few of the teeth and using that same muted purplish red color. Do a little bit of the tongue right there. And let's just say while we're thinking about it, while we're here, I'm going to make a color that's a little bit more towards the bluish side of things. Light blue. And just hit some of these pieces of the bridle right here. Or the bit, sorry. Now look at the difference this will make. And this is not even white. See, that's the beauty of oils. I can just didn't like it, wiped it away. There we go. See, if it's too thick, I can wipe it away. That's the nice thing about the wet oil paints over dry oil paints. See, again, for whatever reason, just keeps ending up too thick. I wipe it away. Try it again. That is not something that's easy to do in acrylics because it sets so fast. This not going to set fast. So this is a little preview of what we'll be doing next as we start to hunt down some of these extra little highlights. Work a little bit lighter in some of these areas too. Try and find some more middle tones in some of the armor there like I just did there. Maybe even here on the end of some of these armor plates. Just to get a little more contrast and form. So this is, let's do some of this in our next stage. Let's continue with our musician that we were just working on. And what were we doing? I'm just trying to find a few areas where things could be a touch lighter. These are not final highlights by any means. All I'm trying to do is, like there on his hand, here on the horse's neck, even here on the crown / helmet type thing. Just looking for some more places to throw some of this color here. Again, we took the turquoise, bit of the off-white, and some of the sky blue. Combine those together to create this. And we've done this before, so I just laid down some color there. And then we find ourselves one of these type of brushes. Get it where you can see it. So look at just a really rough, nasty brush stroke. Now I can come in here. So okay, I buffed out the edge of that side, or let's do it on the other side now. And once again, the same thing there. Give it a little bit of a clean there, and we'll do the same thing here. So now those leaf plates start to have a little more turn. Here, let's throw some lighter tones in there. Now, if I don't smooth them out too much, then maybe it looks a little bit like some kind of hammered steel or something. See, we won't completely buff that out. We'll leave a little touch of it there. Leave a little bit behind. Like that. So it's ever so slightly starting to mimic what's going on with their shield here. And once again, nowhere near any kind of a final highlight color at all. And whatever I don't like, I just say, you know what, that's not quite what I'm looking for. I can just wipe it away. And we can continue to work some of these midtones in here. Now, just as a little precursor again, so let's take something that really is much lighter. And right here on the edges of the shoulder armor. Now look at that. Now that is an intense highlight there. That is very different than what we just put down. We'll do it here too. We'll do it here. Once again, if it's too intense like that, I can just go in there and wipe some of that away. So always feel like you can make those sort of adjustments and changes. Don't want you to think that you're stuck accepting what's there. Now, you don't want to keep messing around with it. What is the expression? The enemy of good is better. That's actually the mortal eternal enemy of good is better. Now, look at the difference it's going to make right here. You can see how much lighter we're going to get. So, we're not going to work any lighter than that right now, but that's what we're working towards. See, we can do that here. Get a little bit on the end of that. Look at the difference it's going to make here on the edges of this armor. On the hand. On the bugle. So that it would be more of our final stages there, but I just wanted to illustrate to you how, while it seems what we're adding is really light, it's nowhere near our final highlights yet. Let's move on here to another one. Go back to our color here, and I don't want to necessarily do this on every single one. Maybe we alter the color a bit, we make it more of a purple type tone. We're always looking for some type of contrast from one to the next, not just contrasting one piece of armor versus another, but maybe even potentially contrasting one figure to another. That's we're doing an army here. That's one of the challenges, I suppose you could say, when you're doing something that's an army versus one-off figures. You're trying to make things look different, while at the same time making it humanly possible to finish the darn unit. Because you can add enough things that make it look really dramatic and fun and interesting, and then you have zero chance of actually getting it done. And those are if this is your first, this is probably not your first unit that you've ever painted. I'm pretty doubtful that if you're watching these, you have painted either one, if not several armies already before. Because I don't think most beginners, I don't really do my stuff for beginners. There's other folks that do that, and they do a real good job of that. And they can go to them. But beginner you're not going to find too much of that here. You need to have, what is it? You must be this tall to ride on this ride. Well, yeah, you've got to have a certain amount of experience with painting to be able to digest some of this stuff. So again, we just took a little bit of the paint off here, moving it around. Didn't even go to the secondary sort of blending brush. We'll go up here. That looks like that's on screen. Get that bit of an edge. March down here. Here's some more. Let's change this around a little bit. So I'm going to take, that's our Payne's Gray. We're going to mix some of the off-white with it. Like so. Now, unfortunately, I found out the hard way that I can't make the palette camera go black and white the way I can the regular camera. But this is about the same level of light or dark as what we've been working with. So let's put some of this on here now. There. Throw some of it right up in there. And it's almost, by comparison, it's almost pink. And we can do the same thing. Gonna shift it this way, and I'm gonna scumble this and burnish it. So, as I said earlier, even if your oil paints are dry, you have not lost the ability to take advantage of oil paints. So look at that. We actually have some rust that's darker than the shield color itself. It's like it's been stained and whatever over the course of time, or whatever weird forces that it's been subjected to. So we're going to use that over here. So now we have a couple of different semi-lighter, I don't want to call them highlight colors, but light middle tone colors. Might even throw a few of those onto the robes just for the heck of it. Go with more of an ochre here. Take some of that purple blue. And we will try some right there. We'll get some of this onto the helmet here. Like so. Even over here to blend in some of the turquoise. We've got the stirrup there. And let's hit the bottom side of that. I can always throw in a little more of the off-white. Do some a little blending there. Let's try our next one. I'll continue on. And this is something that I did in the previous episode where see it's light and then dark. We want to preserve that. I have to see that and not lose track of that. I'm going to try and accentuate it a little bit. Like that. See what I did there? It's almost as if there's a few dings and dents in the metal there, which that makes sense. And now we'll go back in and what are we doing here? Yeah, we're gonna move this down. Continue. We'll add some of this right in here. Gonna add some here too. Go back to some of the purple, not purple, the Payne's gray there. Mix it with that field green. Remember, we were also going to do some darker glazes. I got both down there. There, now you can see it. What are we going to do? We're going to semi-mix those together. I'm going to leave a few areas to do their own thing. And here we're going to darken this down. So this is a lot closer to, say, traditional glazing. If this was an acrylic thing, I'll be doing a lot of what I'm doing right now. And I really have not had the opportunity to try this much before. Well, because I haven't had a chance to try it on as many units. The Soviets they were a little different. They obviously didn't have armor, being World War II Soviets. Despite the one unit in bolt action that wears the body armor. We won't get into that. So here we have it. Let's not forget about our turquoise here. What are some of the fundamental things when we talk about doing the non-metallic stuff? And it's a contrast game. It's all about the contrast, but it's not just about lighter versus darker. It's saturated versus unsaturated, warm versus cool. A lot like what we're doing here. There's many different ways to establish contrast on things. Here, let's do the sword blade here. Let's see what happens when we drop this lighter color in here on the blade. That's why I try to incorporate these non-metallic things within the army painting instead of, oh look, here's this new thing we're going to do. I try to make it a little less new and scary if you haven't done it before. Because there's just nothing like getting worried about something, getting anxious about it before you've even started. You're kind of defeated before you begin. And all I'm doing here, I'm just looking to grab a little bit of lighter stuff on the edge of the sword there. We've even got, this is some of the straight up sky blue here. I'll just get a little bit of that on the top surface. And once again, that's in the form of some pretty transparent stuff going on. So this is my first opportunity to experiment with this kind of masked painting over dry oils. This way not only do you know it works, but hopefully it inspires you a little bit to say, oh, you know what? Well, I'm going to try new stuff too. Because who knows what I might discover. Alright, we need to get a little bit of reflected light down here. We just had a disturbing lack of it there. Who knows, maybe it was just an area that I forgot. Looks like you can see that. What are we going to do? We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to walk this up. Walk this right up the armor panel, like so. And if I feel like I need more, I can throw another round of that on there. So I put some on the upper part of that too. Let's get rid of some of the junk. You can see that. Yeah, work the way down. Work that up. So now, see how we have that light up there, dark down there, and then when you hit it with one of those side highlights like this, then you get the separation like so. But we don't, again, we're trying not to get too out over the skis, get too far ahead. And I'm going to do here a bit of, alright, so we did a little tapping away there. Let's grab a smaller one of these and we'll just merge these things together. Can even go a touch brighter. Now, this is what I mean where there's not, well, right here we're going to do this stage. This is what we're going to do. For the oils, there's no stages, especially when you're doing units, because each one of these is different and I wanted to do a different thing. I wanted this to be different than some of the others. I'm trying to have more of a hammered steel type look here, and I felt like I needed to do that just using what I had at hand here. So I just kind of saw it and said, you know what, I'm going to do this right now. Here, so we did that. Okay. Just like we did on the other panels, we drag that down. Try to get a little bit of that secondary reflected light down there. Even some on the sword blade. Oh, looks like I need to do some stuff up here too. Looked at that and said, whoa, wait a minute. We don't have much shading up here. And we'll just rectify that right now. Get some on the helmet here. So I really love the way the rust and other colors got down into the crevices here on these guys. That worked out really well. No doubt about it. Again, even here on the helmet of the horse, face plate. Push this around. Tone some of this down. Don't want to leave real obvious shapes and stuff behind. Alright, let's on his shoulder right here. Gonna do same sort of little blending trick that we did on other panels. Let's get some turquoise on this one. and a few, just a couple of lighter areas. I'm going to do the same thing up on this ridge here. Turn that into a filbert brush. And same thing there. Just look into, yeah, that's all. I just wanted to get a few extra touches of lighter color on that. I think we've got one. Yeah, down here we got his lance needs some lighter things here. And let's just do that back here. Maybe not so much on the tip. I don't want it to look like it's bright and shiny. See if we can hit a couple of the rivets there. And you don't like what happened, go in there and just wipe it away and it's gone. Like it was never there in the first place. I have to keep in mind to save probably 20 minutes-ish, something like that, so that I can do... Yeah, let's get the rest of this. And I can do the bases on these guys. And that was all from the first episode there. We had a lot of fun doing our skull bases and such. Let's get the more purplish color here. We got to get this on the tops of these feet here. Gonna hit this. Now, we'll do that same little blending trick that we've done so many times before. Now here, I'm actually going to see about what I can stipple on here. This is intentional. I wanted a brush that was kind of ragged there, like it is. I'm going to take some of that away. And then I can scumble that in again. So that looks, see all those little tiny dots right in there? I was looking for something like that. It's a little more texture as opposed to this is fresh plate mail that was just made at the armory. That this is something ancient, maybe something a little sinister. Here we go. And let's get some of these plates with some more lights. Now remember, this whole time I've got to keep thinking, let's not get these suckers too light. If they get too light, well, the highlights really won't have as much effect either. But then it's not going to be quite so convincing as, well, black/dark armor. Alright, let's feather that out. Let's feather this out. I have to say, this is probably... This is the part of the oil painting that might take you the longest to get used to. Which sounds crazy. You'd probably figure it's the other stuff the early stuff, the crazy stuff where you're slapping paint all over the place. This may take you a little longer. Maybe not to get used to. That's take advantage of. I think that's the term I'm looking for. It may take you a while before you learn how to really say, oh yeah, okay, I did this in the earlier stages. Now here's how I can take advantage of it and play off of that. Sort of, well, like playing games with your army. You start to learn your army better. The more you play it, the more different situations that you're in. That's the only way you can really learn, is get that experience. So we're just trying to find a few bright things to put on that lance. Not everywhere. Just to touch on the end of the horse's faceplate there. And here we'll do a few doodads along the side of the helmet there. Now we've got to do, and this we're gonna go something even more different now. We're gonna take some green, because why not? This is basically the same level of light as those other colors, but let's do some more of a greenish color here. Let's lighten it up a touch. You don't want to go too crazy with it, but that works there. Go back to our blending brush here. It's where you can see it. And let's move these around, incorporate this into what's already there. Like so. Because when we go back in with the lighter edge here, like so. One more time. And I think, let's see if we've got any more of these. I think we've just about hit all of these with that medium area there. So what we'll do is we're going to go back in again and we'll do some lighter tones on here and see what we come up with. We'll do some of those edge lights, other things here on our armor, and we'll see where we're at once we do that. We're back and we're going to see what kind of different highlights that we can find here on our Morghul Knights. We've got our off-white that's over here. We'll keep working with that. And like we've seen on some of the other ones, and you can see it on the different picture examples on the sides. What we're trying to do is find ourselves an edge, like so. Work that in. Here, let's do that on here. Just a few. We don't want to go crazy and highlight every single edge, because that's not going to get the job done either. That's going to look a little weird. kind of spoil a lot of the effects that we've been working on all this time. And in places, see how it's interrupted there? And we do a little bit of a dot light there, and then once again it's interrupted. It's a little bit of a tap tap tap. It's in some places it's more of an intact complete stroke, and in other places it's broken. Gonna do that on the shield here too in places. Like that. See, we just got few along there. A little can do a lot. We edge up the lance here. Gonna go back to some of the sky blue color, then back to some of this lighter stuff here. Incorporate the two together. See how quick that was? Doesn't have to be difficult. I wish people would just let things make their life easier, because we've talked about it so many times. It's supposed to be a fun thing, not a frustrating thing. It is your hobby after all, and I know a lot of people, they just can't. Their hobby cannot also be their work. If it is, it turns them off so much they'll just stop doing it. And, well, that's no good at all. We don't want that. So again, we're just finding these little things along the edge here, just ever so slightly. Because too many of those, it'll, instead of being some kind of semi-corroded burnished steel or whatever, then it just becomes some kind of knight in shining armor type thing. We don't want that. So again, we're interrupting in some places where we put those little highlights. We've got the bit there. Gonna do this is gonna be more of an intact light there. We're gonna do some on edge of the right, like so. Just like this. Find a few lights there. Maybe even on some of these areas too, just a little something right there. Okay, and then here, let's grab our other one here that doesn't have those. So you can see that it just adds one extra little level. I don't want to call it realism, but just one more texture that makes it more, maybe a little more convincing. So again, in places here where I haven't done the bridles, or I feel like the teeth need to be a little lighter. Now this will be interesting. This is the one where we worked on making this area a bit brighter. So I'm going to try and accentuate that even more. It's that whole chest match thing. This is something we've been working on the whole time, building this up right in there. Let's get one or two of these rivets here. And what I might even do is almost as if it's some kind of shield damage here. So I'm going to push some of these around like I've done before, like that. Maybe this is not quite as light, but we need something in here too. We've got nothing going on here. It's all just darks. And see, we'll get around the side. This is our champion figure, so that's why I got the yellow out here. Let's do some of this in some yellows. Get just a slightly different tone on him than everybody else. And this will identify him as that unit captain. Because just about every game system has some kind of warband leader, squad leader, regiment leader. There's something. So we can almost give like the impression that maybe, see, there's a little, this was possibly gold at one point. Like that. And now he's really starting to change. And oh, we did. And how hard is this just to add a little bit of this light yellow in some places? It is not that difficult. I think we can even make it a touch lighter in a few spots. Here's a bit there. And no, we gotta, I think there's a few other areas I'm gonna try and hit. I'm gonna go back into my lighter color here. I see a few spots that I want to get with some of this. Even some of those spikes there. I almost forgot back here. Interrupting those where I can. And like I said, not one continuous unbroken line, but breaking that up as many areas as possible. And we'll get on his shoulder there. I almost forgot this arm over here. So it happens. Now there may be some things that I do off camera just because there's no way for me to hold it. And you just see it like this is difficult right here. I'm going to try and get one part of an edge light right there. That's all I was looking for. Is see, now I've got the two shades of rust on either side of that. Gonna go back to my yellow here and do some of the hilt of this sword. We have to give the impression of that maybe at one point this was gleaming metal at one point here, and then it just, through the corruption of evil and everything else, whatever, it lost all of the original luster. And this is so much fun doing that. Now we will want to keep moving the line here. Don't want to get too stuck in on one guy, although that is he's supposed to be the champion there. You might want to make sure, like, look here, I just noticed there's a whole area here that's got nothing on it, and it's actually metal. I thought it was cloaks and robes. It wasn't. So what do? We just go in there and make a quick change. So we're good to go there now. And here's our musician. Once again, gather up our lighter color. See, we already did the shoulder pad there. I'll just hit a few of these spots. Let's see if we can't break this up like we've done on some of the other ones. See, we'll hit it here and then interrupt it, go back down. Same thing here. Start it, interrupt it, go back down. And now I've got here. So I dropped in those. Now you can see it. And I'm just push those around. Just a little hint of something there. And some of these, it's almost like some scales back here. These I might actually give them a little bit of highlights. I haven't done it on other ones. This is a good chance to make him look a little different. I think he's got less of the cloak also flowing over that. So not a bad opportunity. We're going to do the same thing on these plates here. Here, let's hit these. I'm going to get some up here. Couple more here. And see, we're again interrupting it almost like it's a little dot 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 like Morse code there along the edge. Makes it look like it's got a few dings and stuff in it. I try not to paint the cut marks in the armor anymore. I used to do that a lot. Then I realized that might be a bit too much. It's like, would you, at this scale, that would be such a tremendous cut mark that that weapon would be like fallen in half. And that's, I know we all have to kind of do some artistic license on things at times. Now take me some of this green over here and just throw in a few little touches of stuff here, just to have those little touches of green in there. Let's advance to our next one here. Now this one's going to need a lot more highlights because we were using the other ones as examples along the way. And this one really needs some of those interrupted highlights. See that? I think, yeah, you can really see. Oh, we start and stop. Now, I don't want to do too much gold on this guy here because we don't want him to blend in too much with our, basically the commander of the unit. But we will indicate, now I'm using more of an ochre here instead of a gold. Just want to make sure, yeah, I think I have that in focus for you. And I'm picking a few. I'm going to put some ochre out here actually. And just scumble that in. Let's go back to our lighter color again. Don't want the teeth to get too bright. I seem to remember those as not being terribly fresh looking white chompers on those horses. And I could have gone in and hunted down exact reference pictures of these things. I might have done that on the Army of the Dead, but somehow I wanted to have these to have more of my own flavor to them. Just like my Easterlings were nowhere near like the Easterlings that you saw in the movies. For whatever reason, I felt the need to make mine different. I guess when you see them in one color so often, you just say, oh, I don't want to just repeat what everybody else has done. I want to do something that's different, something my own. So I am going to push some of this around. I just added that lighter stuff there. Push that around. But I'm pushing around with actually some other color on the brush this time. And that's when I did my Tomb Kings was the same thing. I said, okay, there's going to be no turquoise, or at least not in the way people are using it. No reds, no golds, not even purples and stuff, because I tried to look for every Tomb King's army I could find so that I would not be repeating anything. And it was a way more interesting, fun project, that's for sure. My story, lived my story. The army itself, sadly, was kind of a disaster just because it was so horrible in the way they wrote it. They just killed the army off. So that was sad and unfortunate. So again, didn't like the way that went down, so we just changed it. So we've got the armor on his feet here. So what we'll do in the next segment, this is before we get to the basing. What I'm going to do is go around on some of the cloaks and the blankets on the horses and see if I can do some more little color changes on them. Not necessarily highlights, but throw in a little touch of purple here and there. So that'll be the next thing that we do. And then that would pretty much conclude the painting. Maybe there's, I know these couple of guys here with the bases, where I'm painting the bases on here. We adjust those things too. We make the skulls lighter, darker. Alright, so here's the last one. We're going to do the same parts of the bit and the bridle, some of the teeth, finding some lights there, and gonna work our way in through that. We've set this up pretty well for our final highlights there. I can see that the turquoise and the more purplish gray next to each other here. Very nice. Let's see if I can do a few on the things on the shield like I did on the shield of that other one. So again, we're going to do a couple of these, a couple of the rivets, go back to that bigger brush and move some of this around. Like that. And let's find ourselves Alright, I don't know if you heard that sound. That was basically this thing. It got caught on my glove and it basically went flying. So we're executing a few little on-the-spot repair things. No big deal. Once again, trying to capture a few hints of glints. We'll call it that. How's that for an expression? And I think this might be one of the last sets of armor panels that we have to think about here. And what I'm going to do, some of this. Let's grab this other one. Push some of this around. Take away some of the excess there. I'm just taking this and trying to do that same dark, light, dark thing. Do some of that here. Got a few touches of lighter highlights here. Some of the edges of these bands of armor. There. Now maybe I do some kind of glowing whatever on the eyes. If I do that, that's pretty much going to have to be off camera because I just can't get the darn thing inside there. That'd be way too difficult. That would be a massive, massive challenge there. See, even sometimes this little indication here is just enough. Now as a little bit of maybe a preview on what we meant by creating some different forms of contrast here. Let's see what we can find. We're going to grab, well, this could be interesting here. This is that primer red and the green, and see how that gets a little lighter there. We're just trying to find a few lighter tones on that little banner, a few more on the hood here, because this is pretty distinct. Now some of these colors are already in other parts of the miniature, so it does make sense. We just add a little yellow ochre now. And we just add in a few more. Again, not highlights, just lighter mid-tones. Let's take the raw umber, and now we're mixing it essentially with the kind of our turquoise highlight color here. This is going to be a different sort of brown. And using that on our bugle, finding some other areas here to get some light. So this is the type of stuff that we're going to do on our other Morghul Knights to create some extra interest. See, even here maybe I'm going to grab some of that reddish color there. We'll separate the horse from that a bit. We might even do some dark glazing even. We'll go wild. Who knows what's going to happen? And all this did was it gave us a little more form where it was lacking. because probably just did that and went on to another area. And so now we get back to it. As we add a few more of these lighter mid-tones. We'll add them here on this part of the cloak. If you want to go crazy, you could stipple some of this to make it seem like it's got texture. I had some kind of really old cloth that's just kind of decayed. Let's see if we can make this even more of an interesting, almost more of a bluish color here. And all this does is, here, we'll slap some of that on the armor here. Like that. Then get some on his clothes. Just makes it, I suppose, look a little more otherworldly. More undead. See, even here on the horse, give him a touch of blue down here by the hooves. It's a color that you wouldn't expect to be there, and therefore it makes it look more like, oh, what's going on with that? Why is that way? Well, it's because he's essentially undead, pretty much, I guess. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll do a quick little segment where we do some of this, lightening things up. And then we're going to we'll do some of our bases. And get some flock and leaves, static grass, and other little doodads on there. So we'll be right back with some midtones on our cloaks. So as I mentioned before, what we're going to try and do is get a few more lights in some of these areas on the cloaks. And not just, okay, we make it a little bit lighter here, a little bit lighter there. We're also trying to find some color differential. By that, over here there's more of a bluish green. Here we've got something that's more towards the reds. Here we have a bit of generic green, but we don't have a lot of actual color in there. So let's see if we can accentuate that a little bit. So I'm mixing, which is basically just a light middle tone green here. Get this where you can see it. And this is not very much at all as far as how different it is from the color that's underneath it. But it does a couple of things. It's going to give us a little more shape in some areas. And also give us some color variation, because down here we have more of a yellowish tone. When you have, it'd be different if this was, say, something along the lines of a Bretonnia Knight, and it had tons of, this was quartered, where you had, say, blue in this quarter and yellow over here, and there were just obvious lines of demarcation between the colors. Here, well, it's this whole generic thing of, well, the robes are black. Which in some ways, that's a little bit liberating, because it means we can kind of do whatever the heck we want. See here, I just threw a little bit down in there that needed something. It just was too plain, didn't have enough going on. And I can just keep going here. Now, you're going to see me dive into the white spirits a little more. I think they're in this little final act here as we go through the process. Reason being, well, it does a couple of things. Yeah, see, we needed that to distinguish these folds. There was not enough value difference, even though we have plenty of dark in there. Sometimes we have to go a little bit lighter and just let the overall appearance be darker as opposed to we are specifically using black. Another reason to work a little thinner, as we've talked about several times just in this episode, the thinner you work with, the more white spirits, the more of that oil you replace, the more you're going to enhance that final drying time. And at this point now, I don't need things to stay wet because I've kind of used that slow drying, extended drying time, however you want to phrase it. I've been using that to my advantage this whole time. Now, I don't necessarily need it to be because in a little bit we will just be doing the base thing. And I want these, they don't necessarily have to be 100% dry for me to get them on the bases. I need the paint to be set. Now ones like this, where they're already on the base, well, no big deal. So here, see what we're going to do. And get some of this red in here. That's a little bit of the Starship filth. I think there's Starship Bay filth and Starship filth. There's actually two different ones. I didn't realize that. One is definitely more of a, I want to say more of a, not a raw umber, more of a dark ochre color. It's been so long that since I used it, it was kind of a dark sienna. Almost more like a sepia. So see here, I'm going in here into this part of the crown here, toning down some of those highlights that we put in there. Because I just see, I need to tone that down. I went too far on that particular light, and we're sort of doing that semi-glaze thing here again. And all of this it's up to you. You could have stopped practically halfway through this video for some of you. See, I'm doing a little bit of extra stuff on the skulls here. They were very similar in color. I'm even going to see if I can't get some green on those. And I'm going to really go with a crazy color here. Good, you can see that. Yep, in there. That's good. This is something I always try to remind myself when I'm doing skulls. You want them to have more of a stained look, not bleach bone, but you also don't want to go with the automatic, well, okay, it's going to be some kind of tannish color, some kind of off-white. I wanted to get something more in there besides just that here. Maybe I can even get some of this bluish gray in here. So at this point, it's you determine how far you want to take these. And I know I say this in every single episode, but maybe some of you haven't seen this series yet, or this is the first series you've watched because you're like, ooh, man, I really got to see these Morghul Knights because I'm working on Lord of the Rings stuff, which means you maybe didn't see the Easterling series, or maybe you didn't see the Song of Ice and Fire series where I mentioned the same thing, or heck, even the Bolt Action series. And I'll take this opportunity to talk about some of the other series. There's going to be more Bolt Action series. I'm going to go to the desert because I think that would be a unique set of troops. The basing will be different. It's not going to be we've done a lot of sci-fi, fantasy, well, not sci-fi, fantasy bases lately. And I want to get back to something that's a little more, I don't really want to say realistic because that has connotations also, but something that's a little more closer to what we know as what's realistic, what we might experience if we were to walk around the desert. It's going to give me a chance to use some other new products and blasted earth, that kind of thing. I also want to mention the Rohan faction, that's going to come up. There will be other Song of Ice and Fire. Mostly, that has less to do with how shockingly different the painting would be, but it has a lot to do with the basing. The multi-basing. I just got a bunch of new stuff from Green Stuff World in, along the lines of what we did here with the skulls and such. And the only way to really show those off is in an army painting video. I'll use some of those potentially maybe for the Rohan series as well. This needs to be dark. I know we talked about doing lights, but that, it's the nature of these figures. These are not necessarily the most fantastical castings in the world. I do enjoy the figures, yes, but there are some shortcomings, which sometimes means that I have to take some liberties and force the issue in some areas. And I might not otherwise have to do some of the Song of Ice and Fire stuff. There's a few areas, say in mold lines and stuff, where it's harder to get rid of because they're one piece. But here there are definitely some strange things where it's just, okay, the piece of armor just mysteriously ends. I bring this up. Why? Because, well, you've run into the same thing if you're painting these, or just any of the Lord of the Rings figures in general. So you got Bolt Action series that'll be coming up. There's going to be definitely a lot more Lord of the Rings, because you got Rohan, there's going to be Gondor, elves. So plenty more Lord of the Rings stuff. This is by no means the end. It's the end of the beginning, maybe. That's about it. I'll use that famous phrase. Here, let's get a little bit lighter up here. Like that. Again, trying to avoid getting things to be too light. But now, I like what's going on with those skulls a lot more. Let's see. See here, we didn't need to. We already had inserted some greens in here and some grays. I will maybe hit some of the rocks here. And from this point, if you're looking to say, okay, exactly how long would it be before you anticipate it would be safe to throw these things on the bases? Well, I mean, if you got to do it, it could be in an hour or two. But what I'll do is these will set overnight. They may not be 100% dry, but they should definitely be dry enough to make it safe to do the basing. And then we can get this one out to you. The next series that I'm working on is another Song of Ice and Fire. Just because, well, I need them for Adepticon, for one thing. And also, it's that same thing with the multi-basing. I want to show you how to use this stuff, like the skulls and the other stuff on those, plus a new texture roller that I really hadn't used to make any kind of army bases before. I used it for a few one-off things, and I had actually kind of forgotten about it because it didn't fit many of the themes that I was looking for. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, Lannisters and lions. So yep, that'll be the next series. Again, it's a unit that I needed for Adepticon, mostly because the way the tournament rules work is a little different. So I think we talked about that in the opening parts of this particular tutorial here. Here, let's get a little around down here. If I wanted to, I could also do the mud spatters on this. And I may still do that, actually. After the fact, I might add that in. And just here, I don't want to complicate things any more than necessary. Because while I love to spend infinite amount of time on these and really show you some super, super, super high detail things. I'm thinking most of you, what you're looking for, the paradigm is to paint things faster, sorry, but still have better results. You're not looking to keep the army process slow. Yes, it would improve how they look, but an army that never gets painted, well, that's kind of, you can't improve on the look of an army when it's not painted. So that's why we're focusing more on the painting side of things here and getting those done, as opposed to the extreme precision. That's what the one-offs are for. And I'm going to start doing more of those, say, on special characters. I have a Theoden, I have Eowyn, Arwen. I've sort of rebuilt with the help of some kind donations from friends. Been able to rebuild some of my lost Lord of the Rings collection, especially when it comes to the special characters. And that means I can say, well, you know, here, let's do a 2.5, 3 hour episode on Arwen and just really do that one up right. Really make it a nice, snazzy looking base. Maybe we do some kind of freehand filigree on her clothes. Now see, this is still wet enough. I can get in here and work in those little highlights. And then you just say, all right, enough is enough. We move on to something else. So here I think we're going to go more with ochres and reds. Yeah, let's do something on the reins here. Again, if I don't like it, I can always wipe that away. And see right there, that's almost a reddish orange, but over here it's more of a green. So we're going to take that ochre, get it into the green. So it in a way, it's still in the same general family of colors, but we've shifted it towards green. Now we're back more into the ochres again, and then up here, maybe we take it a little more towards the red. And just all I'm looking for is right here in just this one specific zone. That's it. It's another way where you can get light colors to, I guess, a good place to try and find light color or light areas in otherwise dark clothing. Because I'm looking at right now, I've got a black sweatshirt on, huge surprise. And when I look at the folds, there's blues in there. Some of those folds are really light. And my sleeves are not even directly underneath a light whatsoever. And I'm just going to find a few places to accentuate a bit of gold highlight on the sword there. Take away some of the excess. And we'll keep going along here. Find that front edge a bit. And yeah, tried a little something in there and that didn't work the way I want, so I can go in here. Just tone it down with a little bit of last minute wash there. Let's grab another one. This one's probably gonna have more blues in it. Yeah. Now let's try some of this. Looks like a turquoise type color here. Let's dingy it up a little bit. That's a technical term. And let's hit some of these robes a touch with that. But I also like it for some of these areas too. So I'm just going to go with this here. Now this needs to be, I'm going to say more towards the warm end of things. So I just grabbed a little more green right there. We gotta go along this edge here, just like we did on the other one. Gotta find a few lights here in this spot. Here, let's lighten up a little more. And again, by a highlight, this is really a medium gray, a medium greenish gray that we're putting here. Nothing else. Just don't want to overpower existing areas of light, especially on the armor where we want it to be a little more metal. This is more towards the red, and this I always have, if I have the colors out there on the palette all set, I'm going to be more likely to use those. If they're not, that's why I never, even when I'm doing acrylic stuff, I never ever paint out of the jar, because out of sight, out of mind, basically, is a little bit what happens. Here, we need a little separation with that part of the reins there. I'm just going to kill that. This could use maybe a bit of rust on it here. There. I'm trying to do a little bit of a glaze here. We're going to let the capillary, boom, right there. See? That's all I did. Just dropped in a few. And as we said on multiple times here, when you've got oil paint that's dry, you can go right over it like that with those glazes and get some really nifty results. We'll just find a few areas on the tail here. And with this, we're gonna say we're ready to go for basing. Okay, we'll just stop here. Don't want to take this too far. Can always do more later on. And at this point now, we'll take these other 3 that we don't have on bases yet, and the other 2 that we do have on bases, and we'll do some of our Green Stuff World leaf cutters and incorporate these onto the skull and bark, and also our cobblestone bases. Alright, so we are good to go. So we'll be right back with the basing in just a second. We're going to get some flock and some dried leaves and some other fun stuff on our bases to finish off the unit here. Now we've got a couple of guys that are already glued to the base. So these, we're just going to add the tufts and the leaves. That's straightforward. We've got some other ones though that were on our dowel rods, like this one. And what we've done is we've taken a few of those off. So the pin is finally revealed here. And we'll do that on the last one too. But we've got also these type of bases. There's our combo flagstone and skulls, and then our straight up flagstone. So I'm trying to do one of each base. Now we've also got a couple of other bases. This one already has, it's already got its leaves and its tuft there. So we might use this one. It depends. It has to do with this one right here. So see this one, we may put him there or on this one. I think this is the most likely candidate right here. And why? Because we need these 2 feet to be touching the ground. This is a nice flat surface. It's also going to have him rearing up a little bit, which means now his feet should clear our skulls. And I think you can see these brightly colored objects right here. These are from Green Stuff World. And there's at least between 7 and 9, maybe more like 9 or 10 of these by now. Every kind of leaf you can imagine. Oak leaves, maple leaves, sassafras, you name it. I'm sure there's just a ton of them there. And what we do is we just collect leaves on our travels to the store because they just kind of land in front of us, basically. Now, I do suggest if you're going to do this, you press these leaves in a book just like we did, but maybe after a couple of days you do this process right here, and that is take your leaf, you get your puncher around it here, you have something that you want the leaves to go in, and you punch. And you can see sometimes you have to kind of tap at them a little bit. Maybe there is a little piece left over of another leaf. You can make smaller ones here, like so. Just get that. So now we got some smaller ones. I just saw those drop in my container there. There's another one. Just drop those in the container. Here's another couple. So now we've got ourselves more leaves. A good friend of mine up in Alaska, he's gotten me all different color leaves. Here's some really nice reds, some greens, some nice tans here. And I've got one here that's sort of a collection of various types. So we'll go with this one here that's more of the overall collection. I'll set these guys aside. And we'll need this. This is from MIG Ammo. There's other things you can use, but boy, this stuff here, it's fantastic because it has surprising power, holding power, but yet when you put it on there, it's just easy. You just apply it with a brush, and when it dries, you don't have to worry about it doing, changing the color of stuff, making things glossy. Not going to do that at all. So let's get some of this out here. So we got it. Now the one thing I haven't been able to do yet is make my own homemade grass tufts in basically the dried grass, dead grass like this. The key is finding the 6mm. There's plenty of 2, 3, and 4 out there, but the 6mm is the key. So we'll continue using this. And that's what we'll do at the start. Now these guys are already on their base. Okay, so I'm going to go in. We'll find a few tufts here. I'm going to say I want one over here. This just seems like we're going to put one here. Why not? We'll just put a grass tuft right here. Like so. I tend to like to put those where things like the hoof or the feet meet the ground. So I drop that on there, and I always have one of these guys handy. This lets me press into the grass without necessarily having to smush it down with my hand. We don't want to be smushing things down with our hands. And we'll just let that sit there and dry a bit. Maybe we find a smaller piece here. So let's do that. And there's That's what I like about the grass tufts, is that there's not just one size all uniform, because and if I run across anything that's uniform like that, I just start cutting them. I'll actually take a scissors to them and chop those up. So let's find a much smaller one here, like this one. You can use a tweezers for this, I suppose. And just press that down. We're good to go. And I might throw another small one over here on this side, right there. Yeah, I'll have it up on top here. So there's another small one again. So here's the tweezers. You know, I can use that to get that in there. So now we've got that trio again. So 1, 2, 3, one being larger than the others. Some of you folks that saw the basing tutorial on sculpting the mushrooms, that's going to be pretty familiar concept to you, because I drove that home over and over and over again. That you don't want to have one on one side, one on the other, especially ones that are of equal size, because that's just a compositional nightmare. So here we go. I'll just use this. Get this on there. Actually, it's a little too long. I'm going to take one part of that off. And I might even use the tweezers here. Drop that over there. And that might be the only one. We'll just do that one tuft. Now here, I pretty much know where the figure's going to go. So I'm going to try and drop in a nice couple of grass tufts here too. So I'll just go one here. Maybe throw one in over there on the other side. So I got a small one sitting here already. Let's grab you. Shove you in there. Let's find one that's bigger. Like that little cluster there. See how that works. There we go. There'll be plenty of room. The horse's hooves over here. So that one's good to go. And on this, oh, I'm not going to do grass. I'm just going to let the leaves do their job there. Now you see these, I call them jeweler's blocks just because that was sort of the term that I heard them called initially. Now what we'll do is we're going to get him off to the side here out of harm's way. We're going to hopefully have a pin vise here like this. And I always make sure to find the paper clips, if I'm going to use those, that always match my bits. Now obviously this is a little bit too long for this base, so we will chop this down maybe about to there. And then I want to make sure that this is reasonably straight. Sometimes they can get bent a little bit. And now we need to position him somewhere. And I'm going to position him right about here, I think. So right in the center there is where I got to drill my hole. And this is where I'm going to take my pin vise, and this is, now you're going to see the back of my hand here, unfortunately. So I'm going to try and get that out of the way. And we're just going to drill down in here. And the nice thing about that jeweler's block, it's solid rubber. So it's doing a couple of things. It's keeping it in place. It's not sliding around on me or anything like that. So I just went through it. And when it went through, it just went into the jeweler's block there. So we've got ourselves got that drilled out pretty well. And now we're going to get some glue on him here. On his feet. There and there. Position him hopefully in the right spot. And there you go. Now sometimes the pin maybe goes a little bit too far. I think I judged that pretty well. So now we've got him nice on his base. Let's go to the next one here. Like we did on the first one, we need to cut down on this. Actually, he's going to go on this one. That's right. Forgot all about this guy who's still on his dowel rod. So I got little pliers right here. Grab that. I just twist the dowel rod. Twist that away. You can see how much of that's still sitting inside the dowel rod. That's just to keep it stable while I'm painting, because remember how vigorous, needless to say, we were with some of our application of the initial glazes and such. So let's position him here. I'm going to have the skulls maybe on one side and the flagstones on the other. So I think this is where my hole's going to go. Trying to get out of the way so you can see it. This is a real awkward thing, but the jeweler's block lets me do this without snapping my drill bit, because that would not be handy. So we're through the Sculpey, we're through the base. And now we're ready to do the same thing with him, but I am going to do a little bit of a test here first. It never hurts to test fit that sucker on there. So we're good to go. He fits. And now we'll do the last one. We'll get them all in place. And then we'll do the last, basically the last step, and that's the leaves, right? So here we go. We're just trying to get some super glue out of this thing. Get him in here. And then we'll let him set. And you can see this guy has that turquoise on him. I really enjoy that. Now that these guys they're starting to be on these different bases, I can really see all my different colors. Now, one of the advantages of the bark versus your Sculpey is I can do something like this. So watch what I'm going to do. Now you have to make sure that the thing's not too fragile. But see how I just push that down? So I can still drill a hole there for him. But it was a whole lot easier to figure out where the heck that hole is supposed to go. And now I can go in here and just drill the rest of the way through. Bang. And we'll do the thing with the glue like you do. Right here and here. Get him down there. And now you see how he's kind of jumping up over the skulls. Right? Set him there. Get these extra bases out of the way. I think I have about 4 or 5 extra bases there, because this is, I think I'm doing something like a dozen of these guys at least. So I have a whole bunch more bases handy. Now, let's get our sand and gravel glue. Let's get our leaf collection here. Get some of this stuff out of the way. And I'm going to zoom in a bit. Try and focus this up for you. Get the tools out of the way. And you definitely want to have, you know, I love my craft brushes, and sometimes you can get this stuff out of here, out of this brush with rubbing alcohol. I can get super glue out of a brush with rubbing alcohol. But this stuff, it is glue after all, so it's going to leave some stuff behind in your brush. I'm going to get this out of the way here. And now we're going to lay down some sand and gravel glue. I can even use a brush here to pick up a couple of these. And that's more of a big old chunk there, so I didn't want to use that. See, I've got different colors, different shapes. I turn them around now. And in this area, it's a good place to have a basically little pile of leaves here. Sometimes I'll even try and structure that leaf pile to have a dark leaf on top of a light one and vice versa. Always trying to think of some kind of interesting composition. And let's see if I can grab some individual leaves. I can. Now, if you want to be a little more deliberate about it. Doesn't all have to be quite as messy as the way I do things. Just drop that leaf in there. So what does that do? It gives us a little bit of color, texture on the base there. That's why I didn't, remember when I was painting the bases, I didn't go too crazy with lots of color and highlighting there. I can even have one or two hang off the edge. And it's glossy now, but the nifty thing about this stuff is it doesn't dry that way at all. Not at all. This is a good place right in here. And I think you'll be able to see it as I just drop in the leaves in here. That's a good spot for them. Helps the transition point where the skulls meet the rest of that base. Do the same thing here. Sometimes it can take a few attempts to get your leaves to stay down. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. We'll even throw a few over here. Now, I don't want to interfere too much with my surface of my flagstones. Don't want to cover up that texture. So we'll only do so much here. I'll try to drop some leaves in there. See if we can't drop a couple in there. There we go. Then we got one more here. Once again, I don't want to go too heavy on the leaves. But I also want to break a few things up here color-wise. Maybe there's just a part of the flagstone where maybe I didn't press it perfectly. See, we got a little gathering of leaves here. Some are lighter, some are darker. And look at that. That is just, doesn't take long, does it? And then we have some texture. So I'm going to actually pop this thing off of the old paint jar here. So that's all it is, just a dead paint jar, because it seems to be a good angle right there for you to look at. And this one here, I want to have a cascade of leaves here. So I'm really going to go in here with some leaves. See if I can get a nice little pile going in here. Like that. Sometimes, is the other thing too, is I can drop in the leaves and then put the glue over the top. So let's do that, see how that works. Now sometimes the glue just takes the leaves with it, like it was trying to do there. Just drop a couple more in here. And back here I want some too. See if I can grab a few that are also got some lighter colors on them. And then I'll take some black paint and go over the edge of these bases. When you're doing the, well, even with the acrylic ones, those washes that I do sometimes will, they'll get some weird looking colors stuck to the side of the base. There. I'm going to try and get a few more in here. Like that. Maybe take a little bit of the glue. Drop that in there. That was our leader right there. One last guy here to deal with. One of the reasons I didn't do the entire unit here is I thought, well, at some point, what if I want to add on to this unit? And I could do some standalone tutorials where maybe we take a little more. We spend 2.5, 3 hours on just one guy. We really go crazy. Maybe the banner. You know, I'll just do one episode just on him. And that way you can get a chance to see how I approach maybe something that's a little more special in the unit. There, just again, finding some interesting places to put the leaves. I sometimes like to gather them around the edges of stuff like these tufts. There. Just trying to get that placed right in there. Here, let's do a couple of more over here. Get you down, and there we go. Yes, you have to talk to your leaves. That's not crazy at all. Now, one of the next things you're going to see this on is the Nocturna episode. The leaves are going to be not quite as dead as this. There are going to be some green leaves on that one. There, that's better. All set. So that's not too shabby. We've got lots of nice color on there. I'm going to change the focus on that so you can see them. Some of the rust colors that are here now are mirrored on the base. That's why we did that bluish gray there, because now we've got bluish gray on him. You try and match up the environment to the figures as best as you can, and that's what we did here. So for those of you who are already Army Painting pledge folks there, thanks for your support. It means a lot. If you can do the like thing on the video, that is helpful. YouTube seems to really want stuff like that. So that would be super helpful if that happens. And I appreciate that. And I'll catch you in the next series, Series 8.